This is a Soaak podcast.
Welcome to the Science of Sound, where cutting-edge research meets real-world application. Hosted by Aaron Fournier, this podcast explores the fascinating intersection of sound, frequencies, and human performance. From the science behind bioharmonic resonance to the future of sound-based wellness, we break down the data, the discoveries, and the impact sound has on your mind and body. Let's dive in.
Welcome to the Science of Sound. I'm your host, Aaron Fournier, and today we have my fellow co-founders of Soaak Technologies. Thanks for being here. I'm excited for this episode.
Yes, excited.
So on today's episode, we're going to dive into some of the science behind Soaak, behind sound frequencies, and talk a little bit about how we got here. That's where we are today.
Awesome.
So first, I want to ask you guys, I think I've talked about this on previous episodes, but I'd love to hear from your perspective on what are sound frequency compositions. What is it that makes Soaak unique in this space?
Yes.
Who wants? Laura, you want to go?
So a sound frequency is a wave. It's a sound wave. It's a hertz. So there are all different sound frequencies, all the different numbers you can think. So 432 is a very common one. So 432 hertz. So it's an actual sound wave. So what it's doing is it is helping us oscillate at a certain frequency. So when you listen to a Soaak sound frequency, your cells are listening to this oscillation, and it is encouraging you through sympathetic resonance to oscillate at that same frequency. So the unique thing about the Soaak frequencies versus just a frequency is that we are frequency compositions. And so our compositions are made up of multiple frequencies specific to your needs. So let's say it's a headache, the headache support frequency. We have, let's say, 5 to 25 different frequencies layered in that composition that are all geared towards helping that one symptom. And so there might be a lot of reasons you have a headache. You might be dehydrated. You might be stressed. You might have not gotten great sleep. You might be alert, like I have a food allergy. That might be why you have a headache. And so we took all of that in mind when we were creating the frequency compositions and made sure that everything that you may need is in that composition. The cool thing about frequencies is they're adaptogenic. And so your body's going to hear, your cells are going to hear or absorb exactly what you need, and anything that you don't need, it doesn't do anything. And so there's no negative side effects with the frequencies. And so I like to kind of talk about music. So if you listen to heavy metal music, you feel a certain way, your body responds a certain way, you get a certain feeling. It's a frequency. The music is a frequency, and it's affecting your cells and your frequencies. Same with like classical. You can picture how you would feel if it's something soft and subtle. That everything is a frequency, and it's affecting you. So the Soaak sound frequencies are just sound waves that are manipulating your body in a certain way.
I think something that people don't understand at first about sound waves, and you actually do a really good job of explaining this, so I hope I don't butcher it. But, we think about sound waves, we think about light waves, and we think about what we can perceive. Yeah. There are sound frequencies that can impact us that we don't have the ability to hear.
Right.
But they are, are they still called a sound wave in that instance? Yeah, it's
still a sound wave. So, like Laura said, sound is measured in hertz.
Right. And
hertz is just a unit of measurement, right? So a frequency is the oscillation, the number of times a sound wave goes up and down inside a second. And the human ear generally can hear between 20 hertz and 20,000 hertz. So there are, 19 and below, there are things below 20 hertz and there are things above 20,000 hertz. Think about like a dog whistle, right? There are sounds that we can't necessarily hear, but a dog could hear. So there are other animals that have,
Yeah, it's the same thing with light too. Other animals are,
can see ultraviolet light and things like that. Light's a little bit different when we think about kind of how the wave motion works. So sound is a mechanical motion, whereas light waves are an ultraviolet. They're an electromagnetic form of motion.
And so this is why Aaron does the science of Soaak.
And then there's also a magnetic component. And so there's a little bit more that goes along with light. And then you also have to talk about and think about that, within light, there's a particle as well. So there's some more kind of nuances to it. But generally, yes, we like to think of when I think about like the color spectrum chart, right? When you think about what can I see, just like what can I hear? So I can see a certain set of colors, but inside that threshold, right, inside electromagnetic waves, there's also ultraviolet light. There's the radiation from the sun. There is, X-rays. So when I go to the doctor and break my arm, right, and I get an X-ray of my body, that is still just a form of a light wave, just at a different frequency. And then also our microwave is a microwave, right? So those are different types of waves.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because we all like think about how sound impacts us, but oftentimes we do use that example of like different types of music. And I feel like that definitely activates different parts of the brain, but there's also like how the sound wave interacts with your body at a cellular level.
Definitely.
Yes.
Like there's that component too.
Yeah. Well, and a lot of the studies that we point to are music therapy related, right?
Yeah.
Because this is sound, so it is music. And so frequencies is still kind of in that newer space. I mean, we talk about it's centuries old, right? Like this is information, this is technology, this is an understanding that is
Ancient Egyptians used.
Right? Yeah, absolutely.
And who knows who else?
Right. Go down the rabbit hole.
Right.
But yeah, this is ancient technology. We're just now starting to do a lot of science around different specific frequencies and how do they impact the body in different ways.
Yeah.
So that's where like the larger body of research in this space is really music therapy, and how can we utilize music, which is sound, to have different physiological responses, different mental responses.
Well, because everything has a frequency, right? I mean,
Absolutely.
it's not just sound. Like the tree has a certain frequency.
Right.
Your
There's an
organs.
oscillation.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that gets into kind of the principles of how Soaak works, which are sympathetic resonance and entrainment. And that's, one of the experiments that we like to talk about and think about, and Henry talks about this one a lot, is having two pianos. Now you're going to make fun of me for the way I say pianos. But so let's say you have two different musical instruments that are, in a concert hall. You have one that you are playing, right? I play a G chord on a guitar. Laura is holding a guitar, but she's not playing it at all. When I play a G chord, her guitar is going to resonate at a G chord. Why? Well, they're the same type of tune, right? They're the same type of instrument, and the mechanical vibrations, the sound waves that move from my guitar will resonate, sympathetic resonance, with her guitar, and through a property called entrainment. So throwing around all the scientific terms, her guitar will start to resonate and play that same G chord. Yeah. That's how this works.
I always see the cells oscillating as like a tire. You either have a round tire or a square tire. And a lot of times if you're feeling anxious, some of those oscillations are like a square tire. You're out of sync. And because our cells can change, because we have mind, will, and emotions through the sympathetic resonance and entrainment, when you listen to a frequency that's unrelenting and cannot change, and you put that next to yourself or a cell that can change, then that square tire is going to turn round, and you're going to not go bumpity bump down the road anymore, and your anxiety is going to drift away. And that's almost an oversimplification, but I always see it in my mind that if my square tire starts clumping along, I know to get, whatever I'm experiencing, if I'm experiencing low energy or depression or low, whatever, insomnia, whatever, I find that frequency that is that unrelenting round tire that's going to keep spinning, that's going to make my square tires, start to oscillate at that same level, and then all of a sudden my problems start to dissipate. So I've always had that example in my mind, and I think it can be backed scientifically, but it's more of a layman's terms.
Yeah. Well, and talking about just like being backed scientifically, our Soaak sound frequency compositions were developed in a clinic with clients by doctors. And so we have the clinical history, the clinical backing, the clinical research that proves the body of work that this works. To date, we have 0 negative side effects, right? Like no one has ever reported that
weren't there like
sound
some
frequencies,
Harvard studies or something?
And so that's kind of where I'm going, is like, okay, well, let's think about this even more, right? Again, the body of research behind this is sound waves. It's all it is at the end of the day. But there's a lot more that goes into it. So I don't want to take away from it, but it is also just sound waves. You have all these different studies, a lot of them are from Harvard, looking at the body of research. So looking at all of sound therapy research as like an overarching term, all of these studies, there are no negative side effects.
Yeah.
Like it's sound at the end of the day. Like our bodies are meant for sound. We have vocal cords, right? It is a part of our existence. It's a part of our being. It's a part of what we do. And so when we think about, well, what is, are there any potential negatives of doing sound therapy? And that's very, plainly the answer is no. There are no negative side effects. There's no negative side to doing sound therapy. There are only positive benefits because, it is adaptogenic. Mm-hmm. So if you're resonating, if you're oscillating, if your frequency is in tune, is in alignment, okay, there's no impact.
Right, right.
There's nothing to happen. There's nothing that can happen.
Exactly.
If you have something that is out of alignment, well, then you already are experiencing some type of negative side effect from that, right? From being out of alignment, and all the frequency is going to do is bounce it back into alignment. That resonance is going to bring you back into alignment. That's going to turn that square tire into a round tire again.
And
I love that.
To take it a step further, just to remind everybody, the body and really all anything that is material is energy. So we are 0.0001% matter,
right?
And so you see our flesh and blood, but really we are a ton of energetic balls inside of the cell, oscillating at certain frequencies. So the body is such a orchestra of sound. It's the vibration.
Yeah.
Wow, yeah.
And so you can just envision it like the body is not matter. It's really not. It's crazy. Science has proven matter.
It's more space than it is
Science has proven that you don't matter.
Well, no, you have a really interesting kind of spiel about this that I would love for you to share.
Yeah. So essentially, what we've been able to do with the latest advancements in
technology. You only thought we were the guests.
You're the smartest one. You've got to answer
your questions today. Is with the latest microscopes, we can actually now zoom in. And when we get, as Laura was saying, as you zoom in and zoom in and zoom in, so you have cells, and inside cells, there are these different microorganisms, right? Like there are parts of the cell, which again, those are still material, right? Like we're still looking at matter. There is space inside the cell, but we're still looking at matter. So, okay, what makes up a ribosome, right? So we go inside a ribosome and blow it up, and we see all these different elements. Okay, well, what's inside this? And it turns out there's a nucleus, and there's electrons, and there's all this. But if you zoom inside those, what's inside the nucleus?
Energy.
There's more space.
Yes.
There's 99.99% space. And then there's this teeny tiny little particle that's way in there.
Yeah. Well,
so when you zoom out, when you look at this, because we're made up of trillions of those, right? Of those tiny little microscopic elements. We're mostly
space.
Energy.
But how they figured it out, though, I thought was through the E=mc², right?
Mm-hmm.
The weight of what they were looking at didn't match up with the mass of what they observed.
Right.
And so that kind of led them to conclude that we're more energy than we are actual matter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which means
That's
the frequencies work so good, and the fact that they're adaptogenic, the body's just sitting there oscillating in a big, lots of energy going on, everything going on, and then the sound waves come and just calm what is a bunch of energy,
just bringing it
That's
back
why
into
it's
alignment.
if you don't understand the science behind it, it does seem very wooey, but when you understand the science, it's that is the foundation of how we should all be operating every day, is knowing that we're just energetic beings, and using sound frequencies and even holistic modalities are so powerful.
Well, I love you use the word wooey, and a few years ago this was considered kind of a wooey part of science, but now science is caught up, and with quantum computing and our ability to actually measure energy fields in people, and I would encourage people to look at the studies that are out there, that you can actually tell somebody is anxious or depressed by measuring their energy field. And we have our heart emits a field of 3 to 6 feet beyond you. That's why you can walk into a room and certain people can change that room, either positive or negative. Like,
they have a presence.
Yeah, that presence. I can feel what you're going through. I got this sense. I changed when you walked into the room. That's your energy field. And so now, since we can prove it scientifically, and now we've got the actual mechanism to change that, the frequencies, like you said, were used in ancient Egyptian pyramids where they would set up healing rooms of frequencies to help and to heal people. So something that's always been from the beginning of time to now, we're using ancient practices to bring current technology to actually put that in your hand. So if you need a tune-up, my dad used to say a checkup from the neck up. If you need a tune-up, a cellular tune-up, you've got it in your hand. And because we're mind, body, and spirit, you can get a cellular and a solar tune-up.
From your cellular device.
From your cellular device. Yeah, there you go. That's why you're who you are.
It's so cool. And I think one of the studies that you were probably mentioning too is that one, I know I read it and I shared it with you, where they were measuring the frequency emitted by certain emotions, I think it was. And so they, I think they had it in a skiff or something like that, where everything else was blocked off.
Right.
And, we always think, oh, like love is the most like powerful, strong, like frequency, or maybe fear, or, something that
emotionally charged.
Yeah. Something really emotionally charged. And they found that it was actually authenticity.
Right.
Was the strongest frequency. So I think that's really cool.
Yeah.
Which is cool because it's just the way your body is resonating. It's not something that you feel overwhelmingly.
Yeah.
It's your body is resonating, and that's
at its natural
and
state.
it's so powerful and strong.
Yeah.
Just so cool.
Which really makes, authenticity is about being in alignment, right? It's in
In
resonance. So
homeostasis,
it totally makes sense that that would be
Right.
the most
Yes.
powerful.
So cool.
Yeah. So, I mean, talking about and thinking about different studies, one of my favorites to go to is there was a study that was done during COVID, and they played 432 hertz for nurses in emergency rooms during the COVID pandemic. So you got to think about what's happening in the world during that time.
Yeah.
You don't know what this really is, right? There's this new thing, COVID-19.
People are
How
dying.
contagious is it? Yeah, what's really happening in your job, your role
take care of those
is
people.
taking care of people on the front lines, like in emergency rooms.
Yeah.
And
And
knowing-
trying to do your job in like a hazmat suit.
Right.
and
Yeah, knowing that if you come in contact with it, you could die. Like
Right.
they're putting
or
their
bring
life
it
on the
to
line
your
every day.
family members,
Right.
like there was that too, where for a long
contagion.
time they're like, oh, well, you could have it for 2 weeks and not know. And then you could spread it for the whole of 2 weeks and kill your grandmother. And it's like, what?
So-
like that's really
Well,
stressful.
it isolated people. It pushed everybody away from
Yeah.
everybody.
So when we think about the backdrop of that, that's how this study starts. They played 432 hertz as a modality for a subset for one cohort of the nurses to see would a frequency, just one, would 432 hertz, would that impact the nurses positive or negatively? And so what they actually found is that both objective and subjective, so how the nurses' physiological stress measures, they did salivary samples to measure stress markers like cortisol. And what they found is cortisol dropped. But then also the way that the nurses felt, the way that they scored their stress levels also went down. So we're seeing both, perceived and physiological stresses go down just by playing one form of a frequency of 432 hertz.
I see when I think of cells, I don't know why I'm getting this like picture in my head, but have you ever seen those fish that are all swimming in a line and all of a sudden they all go one way or go the next?
Yeah.
Like I think that's a cellular connection, and it represents to me like the cellular makeup of our bodies, that when we hear something like that, our cells look at it and they switch, and it goes from an unrelenting source that they're listening to the relenting source, which we are, because we have mind, will, and emotions, and you can switch that. That's why the lady the chief of staff in the congressman's office that we played this for when we were visiting DC felt it in the first 5 seconds, and you could see on her, you could see her whole disposition change, and that's really cool. This is a very cool arena to be in today, with people who have questions from COVID, some things that some medical establishments said that didn't actually hold water, and some things that we're starting to explore and to accept, and I'm not on either side of the aisle. I'm saying whatever's best for humanity, whatever's best for us to move to the next level, we should at least consider it. And now I'm glad so many people are considering sound frequencies.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, so just briefly, you and I had a meeting with a congressman, with a congressman's team. The chief of staff was there. She was extremely stressed.
Yep.
And instead of going through kind of, we had a whole game plan of here's how we're going to talk about this. Here's how
Right.
we're going to present it. Here's what we want. Here's what's going to happen. And all of that disappeared when she walked in the room because you could see the stress that she was under.
Yeah.
And instead of seeing this
You
as
could
a
feel it
business
too.
opportunity for us, we saw it as, man, here's somebody who just needs help. Like she just needs
Right.
help.
That's a person.
And so we saw the humanity, and you threw the game plan out the window essentially, and you
Which
got
I do a lot.
you got up and you're on your way over to the couch. She was sitting on a couch. We were sitting in chairs like this. As you got up, you started walking over and you're like, is it okay if I sit down? As you're sitting down with her, right? And you're like, here, I need to show you this. This is anti-anxiety. It's one of 30 frequencies that we had. Just listen to this
for 10 seconds. Yeah.
Right. And 5 seconds in, you see her just sit back in the chair. 10 seconds in, she just like her whole face changes. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's
Just to see
it's
the
one thing to tell
physiological
someone
response.
about it, but
right.
to show them
Right.
and show that impact is just
well, and
phenomenal.
then, when I get asked about it, that, we had to prove ourselves, 6, 7, 8 years ago, but now doing the work with the military.
Right. Yeah.
And when you have, when your mission is to help train pilots for mission readiness, and you're relied on to that level, it excites me that at such a high level, talking with the 4-star generals and the 1-star, everybody that we've talked to, that it is taken seriously, and it is now being considered one of the foremost modalities to use because it's non-invasive. It's not pharmacology. It's not something that they have what they call in the military slow pills and go pills. And if you need them, that's great. Take them. If you want to, it's not hurting you, take them. It's fine. Like, I'm not talking against those. I'm just saying there's an alternative.
Right. Right.
And if you use that alternative, and if it works, like the general that came to Tulsa and said, for the last 30 days, I've been sleeping just like a baby. I went off Ambien, and now I've just been listening to the Soaak sleep well frequencies, and I've never slept like this before in so many years. Like, you start hearing
powerful.
stuff like that. Yeah, it is. It is. And I love what's happening in the world, that people are starting to open up to those modalities just to try it.
Yeah. Yeah. What are some of the things that you guys have seen? So, Maddie, I know you're on the marketing side. So what are some of the testimonials? What's something that you've seen that's had the biggest impact?
Man, we get DMs all the time of people who their hair stopped falling out. They're able to sleep. They've seen their children be more regulated.
Right.
We know we have a 2.5-year-old.
Right.
We know when she comes back from school and maybe there was some red dye 40 in that or something. Or maybe it's just, at that kind of phase of life, and, we're always go, 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 and she's not regulated, and it's obvious. And, the frequencies have worked really well for that. And we've had a lot of people reach out and share that about their children. And then, of course, like the wellness community loves the habit stack, the focus frequency for work, creativity enhancement. Yeah, exactly. So, we get people tagging us in stories every day, and we love it. So please, if you're watching, tag us.
Continue to tag.
Because we really love seeing it, and it really helps drive how we continue to strategize and how we continue to serve the community, because we're part of that community too.
Absolutely.
Laura came into this as someone who was using holistic health, not as a practitioner. So we've always been very, customer first, and it's really important to us.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, so Laura, you had the clinic that Soaak grew out of. Do you have one or two stories from the clinic of miraculous changes, or, things that happened that for you were like, wow, okay, this is impressive?
Yes. Yeah. So I want to tack on to the kid thing. I have a lot of different stories, but one of the really cool things that I used to see is the parents would be playing it for themselves, and they would see changes in their children. And because it's passive and it has no negative side effects, and it can affect the room that you're in. We'd have parents say, oh my gosh, I was using it for the anti-anxiety, but because my kid was going nuts, and it calmed them down. Or, they play it for their child right before they go to bed, and then they fall asleep way faster than they used to, So stuff like that for me, that I was just like, they didn't even mean for it to be working on their child. They were trying to get it to work for them, and they saw that effect. And I'm like, that's so cool because it is trickling. It's a trickle effect throughout the house. And so that's one thing that we hear a lot in our testimonials is I turned it on for me, but my husband slept like a rock, you know, or stuff like that. And so that's
where you get into the placebo effect.
Yes.
Sorry, I just have to cut you off there, but like I'm jumping to the point I think where you might have been going, which is this just a placebo effect? And I know your response to this is always like, if it is, great, right? Because like at least you're getting the benefit. But like again,
but we know that it's not.
We know that it's not, and this is examples of that, right? Where I'm using it for me, but now all of a sudden my child is asleep in the back of the car, right? And she was going crazy, or I was using it so that I would sleep better, and all of a sudden, you know, my spouse is sleeping better.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's been really eye-opening for a lot of different people, and also especially too, like just the medical community. You know, we have a couple of ER doctors and physicians and people who have run really large departments at hospitals who sit on our board now because they've been impacted so significantly from soak.
Yeah, we have some people that have actually changed occupations late in life, very renowned type, emergency room providers, surgeons, and all that have literally said the medical establishment has kind of let me down, and the way information is coming at me now, I can never be current, because things change so fast. Yeah. And so that's had them question everything. And as they've questioned everything, they've said, there's something to this holistic modality, this being proactive instead of reactive. And yes, if you need that, great. If something happens that you need to run to an emergency room, yes, of course. I'm not saying you shouldn't, but I am saying people are taking a look at it differently now. And as the testimonials pour in, and we are not doctors, we cannot give advice. We cannot say, play this for your kids. We cannot say any of that, and we don't. But the testimonials that come in, we've had that kind of lead our marketing.
We love to share it.
But because it's something that's happening to real people on a daily basis. I remember just real quick about the lady who couldn't sleep. She couldn't sleep more than 3 hours a night, and she'd been that way for like 9 or 10 years. And she listened to our sleep well frequency the first night and slept like 9 hours. Yeah. And her husband called me the next day. I knew him. And he said, after about 3 hours of her not getting up, because she got up every night after 3 hours of sleep, he said like hour 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, I started putting my finger under her nose to make sure she was okay. But it can literally have such, and I'm not saying it's going to work that way for everybody because everybody's different. Yeah. But it's going to have an impact on your life, and it's that's really cool. It's something that I'm happy to be associated with, and to know we're doing something that will literally change the world.
And people are starting to take their health more into their own hands too.
100%.
There's kind of a little meme going around right now that's like the rise of the Chat GPT doctor. And people are like, you better start taking care of your health because the doctors that are going to be taking care of you are using Chat GPT to get through medical school. That's funny. But that aside, it is important, and I'm glad that we are where we're at with our society, and I think that people are really starting to take accountability and to really dig in and figure out what works for them, because not everyone is the same.
Yeah.
Well, and outside of sound frequencies as well, which is what we've been talking about so far, the other big component of soak is your mindset. Yes. And so we have a lot of phrases that we like to throw around, like mindsets manifest, what you think about, you bring about. And that is a very real component of this as well. And it's a very real, and one of the, two biggest reasons we started Soak in the beginning, right? Is because we wanted to share with the world that if you just change your mindset, the power that can have, the power of just changing that 1% change. I can't help but think about like Joe Dispenza and his story with like the power of mindset. And so we talk about ER room and being in the hospital setting. This was an individual who had broken his back. Luckily, he was a chiropractor, and so he knew very intimately how his bone
every
structure
vertebrae,
should
everything,
look, right? Long story short, is he meditated and visualized his body healing itself, visualized each vertebra as exactly as it should be, and visualized and really just stayed in tune with him being healed. and you'll see him walk around all day long on a stage.
Right.
And so it's amazing kind of.
And he said, God, if you'll get me through this, he said, I will teach this the rest of my life.
Right.
Yeah. And he does. I mean, he's doing a conference like every other week, it seems like, somewhere in the world. And he's really dedicated his life to it. I mean, he's doing phenomenal work.
I had a guy ask me, he said, he was a very high powered business executive. And he said, Henry, he says, isn't this just all in your mind? I said, yes.
It's such a big component, right?
Yeah, it is.
Mindsets manifest. That's something that we talk a lot about.
Yeah.
Well, and you've got control over that too. We were reading a study the other day. There was 180 patients. This is from the New England Medical Journal, I believe. So you can look this up. But there was like 180 patients, and they were given 3 choices of arthroscopic surgery on their knee. And the first group, they actually went in, did the surgery for a certain procedure. The second group, they cut it open, went in, did the surgery, did a certain procedure. The third group was a placebo group. They only cut the skin open and sewed it right back up. After 2.5 years, they followed these people, and there were 0 significant difference in pain and function between the ones that actually had the operations and the ones that didn't.
That's so powerful.
So that's not to say, well, it's just a placebo, so no big deal. That's not what I'm getting at. I'm saying that
your mind is powerful.
You're fearfully and wonderfully created, and you can actually think about something and put yourself in that state, like Joe Dispenza did, because we were talking about, that can actually manifest things into your life and things about your own health and your own wealth and your own relationships and your own well-being. So
and create physiological changes,
Yes.
measurable changes.
Physiological changes that you would think could never happen, but that's how powerful we are. So when we included the mindful intentions with the frequencies, put all that together, that's why we're getting such remarkable changes.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. There's another study that was done that I think is really important as well. And I love it because we all like ice cream, but there was a study that was done, and they took ice cream, they took milkshakes, and they gave it to half of the people and told them, hey, here's a milkshake. It's really sugary. It's really fattening. It's not really great for you, but it tastes delicious.
Right.
They took the other group of people, they gave them the same milkshake, but they told them, hey, this is a high protein, healthy, this is going to help you, burn fat, build muscle. It's great for you. And then they measured, and on both studies, you saw exactly what they told them. So the group that was told this was a sugary, bad for you, fattening, they actually increased their body mass. They gained weight, like all the negative things that you would associate typically with drinking a milkshake, right? The people who got a protein shake, they gained muscle, they lost weight. They saw all the positives from what they were being told,
so cool.
because it's what they were being told. So
I'm going to take you to
So
get
I'm going to
protein
start telling myself that.
Let's do an experiment.
Yeah. Next 30 days, ice cream for dinner.
the important thing is we have the power to do that. We don't have to wait for somebody else to tell us that, right?
Yeah,
we don't
that's
have
right.
to be told what we can and can't do. We
Right.
can tell ourselves this is healthy. I think it's so important that, why in so many cultures do we bless our food?
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
That's
Like,
right.
That's
100%.
a practice that's
Yeah.
oldest time.
Yes. And it's so powerful.
yeah.
Because, I love that. And I know this is going off topic a little bit, but the whole idea of blessing your food is you're either blessing or you're cursing. And so let's say it's your cheat day and you have fried chicken and French fries and all the most fattening things. And it's
That's
like,
called my everyday.
I mean, whatever you think.
What do you
whatever
mean
think
cheat
is
day?
your bad thing.
Yeah, I flipped the script.
But even that, it's like you're eating it all the while. You're like, man, I'm feeling a little bit guilty. You know how we do with food. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, if you flip that script in your mind to say, no, this is nourishing my body. This is a treat for me, and I'm going to enjoy every second of it. Your cells are hearing that, and your body is going to absorb it differently than if you were having guilt thoughts while you're eating it.
Right.
And so it is
Right.
just it's a mindset shift and blessing your food. I bless what I'm eating because, yes, no matter what it is, it's giving you energy. It's giving you some nutrition at least to, so you don't starve to death. So you can call it blessed.
Yeah, absolutely. So jumping back into frequencies a little bit, and again, I just want to reiterate so that we created Soaak with sound frequency compositions, but also with mindful intentions. So again, what you think about, you bring about. The importance of your mindset really does matter, but we paired the 2 together. So what are some of the things that people might be worried about with frequencies, or what are some of the misconceptions?
Yeah. So some of the things we hear a lot that we have to explain is like the sound component, like the level of volume.
Yeah.
So a misconception is, if you can't really hear it, it's not working. And that's not true. As long as there is an output on the device. So if it's your iPhone, it's one, volume
click.
1. Yeah. If it's Alexa, it's 1. As long as there's an output, that device is omitting that sound wave, and so it's working.
Kind of like the dog whistle.
Yeah, kind of like the dog whistle.
You can hear
so.
certain frequencies and some people can't.
Yeah.
But it works that way.
Right. So that's one.
Because your cells are always listening.
Right. It's when, and it's not the fact that your ear can hear
Right.
something that is the potency and the efficacy of the thing. It is your energy body
Right.
can feel it because it's a sound wave. So it
I'm
doesn't have to
so-
be super loud.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because it reminds me of a testimonial that we got. And there's a school teacher who plays like the anti-anxiety or the stress relief, one of the two. And she clicks it to one click so that it's essentially inaudible, but
Right.
it is playing. She puts it in her pocket. And so her whole day with her kindergarten pre-K students is having Soaak in her pocket playing anti-anxiety. And she did her own little studies, right? And what she saw is like the days that she does that, the classroom is calm, the kids can focus, everything's relaxed. The days that she doesn't do that, it's crazy, it's chaos. And then she remembers, turns it on, puts it in her pocket, and everything starts to calm back down. So I mean, it's one of those amazing things
Yes.
that, we talk about, again, bringing back up, like, is this just a placebo effect? Well, if it was only a placebo effect, how would it be having an impact on all the other kids in the room?
Right.
They don't even know that this is
Exactly.
happening.
Their mind's not intending for it
Right.
to work or not work. They don't even know it's happening.
So
and
then
that-
just think about what happens whenever you do intend, when you
Right.
pair the two together.
Right.
And this
Right.
is something that like we've also seen, people, what was it? People have told us that meditation plus Soaak, like doing Soaak is like an hour of
supercharges it.
meditation.
Yeah, 5 minutes
Yeah.
of listening to the frequencies is equivalent to an hour of meditation.
That's amazing. So like when you pair those two together, the amazing things that can happen is just fascinating.
Yeah.
So the next thing I want to talk about is, what is the difference between Soaak and binaural beats?
Yes. So the Soaak frequencies, like we've explained, are compositions. And so the binaural beats are different because it is sound waves coming on one side of the brain. And it's basically trying to regulate the brain via sound. The Soaak frequencies...
With different sound waves coming from each headphone.
Like
Right. So you
different
have to
hertz,
have
right.
headphones
Yeah,
on.
you have to have
Right.
headphones.
And the our sound compositions, our frequency compositions, are affecting the whole entire energy body. And so we're essentially affecting every cell in the body, while binaural beats are more affecting
Like
the
a brainwave state.
Right.
Right.
And I know you can know more scientific terms about that. I should have asked you that question.
Did you just ask
Was
her
it
the
a rhetorical
question?
question?
yeah. Did you just ask that so you could correct
Tell me if I'm
her?
correct.
No, that was great.
So, doctor.
The point that I wanted to get across really is that like Soaak is a completely passive modality. You can put it in your pocket and have an influence as a teacher on the whole classroom.
Right.
You can't do that with binaural beats.
Right.
Binaural beats, you have to have on headphones. If you play 100 hertz in this year and 90 hertz in this year, your brain does a really cool calculation and here's 10 hertz, which is a certain brainwave state. So it's brainwave states is what you're
Right.
getting with binaural beats. Bilateral audio is another, it's like a popular thing right now where you turn your phone sideways and watch a video and it plays sound through the different speakers on the different sides. So it sounds really cool. Again, that's not how Soaak works.
Right.
We have our sound frequency compositions. They're designed to be played through any type of speaker so that it is truly a passive modality. It's, just making it more accessible. That's really the name of the game with Soaak is the core reason we did this was to make this accessible to people, both from a price point, because it was $800 to $1,000
Yes.
per month in clinic.
Yes.
Now it's $30 a month.
Right.
If you do monthly, it's even cheaper if you buy the annual.
To get it 24/7, 365 from
Right.
anywhere in the world.
available on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
So how can listeners start incorporating sound frequencies into their daily lives?
Yeah, I think because our most recent upgrade to our app has been our dual audio, and I use it personally. Like when I'm working out, I'll literally go into the frequency page and I'll hit whatever frequency I want, and testosterone boost, whatever it is, and then I'll swipe out of it and I'll open up my favorite gym tunes, my favorite hit list on what's going to get me going in the gym, what's going to amp me up. and I'll play those two together. So I can literally listen to my music and have a frequency treatment at the same time. I was working out with a guy the other day who like benches over 400 and he never works out without Soaak. I mean, it was
amazing.
It was cool to see kind of that testimonial. But for people, around the house, if you're cleaning up the house, if you're doing dishes, if you're cooking dinner, if you're meditating, if you're listening to an audio book, you can have that going on in the foreground, and then put Soaak in the background again, because your cells are listening. So it doesn't have to be audible; just has to be on that setting one. Have that playing while you're listening to an audio book, and you're habit stacking. You're getting such a great treatment out of what you would be doing every day. So there's, how can they? Just being knowledgeable about the fact that you can incorporate it into what you're already doing. I know meditation is so powerful. I don't a lot of times have the time to sit down for 30 minutes or an hour to meditate. I know I should, but if I know I can turn on the Soaak sound frequencies, and like you said, a lot of people have said 5 minutes of listening to sound frequencies are like an hour of meditation. Right. A lot of our customers have said that. And to know that you can literally do it with what you're already doing today and save that time and be more efficient, it's up to going on and doing our 7-day free trial and checking it out. Yeah. I would never ask somebody to get something without trying it first, and I think everybody should try it.
Well, I love that.
I totally echo what you are saying about the dual audio. As a customer, like as someone who listens to Soaak every day, that was my biggest pain point that we solved this past year, was doing the dual audio, because I love to go on walks and I love to listen to my podcast.
Yeah.
And I always felt frustrated that I had to choose. Yeah. Which, like, okay, am I going to do my stress relief 20-minute frequency track, or am I going to listen to a podcast episode on my walk? And now I don't have to choose. I love that.
Right.
That's amazing.
Easy peasy.
Yeah. Makes it accessible for everybody, no matter what.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If you could, please give us a like, share this with someone that you think needs to hear it. And if you could, hit that subscribe button. It really helps us out. We'll see you next time.
You've been listening to The Science of Sound with Aaron Fournier. If you found today's conversation insightful, be sure to subscribe and leave a review. For more resources on frequency-based wellness, follow along at Soaak Podcast. Until next time, keep listening, keep learning, and stay in tune with the science of sound.